Ladies and gentlemen, man, I got some funny stuff going on right here, man. We had a great night tonight doing our main podcast, myself and Nick, but I got some funny stuff that popped off because I wanted to talk about this real quick on a quick video. And I say quick video, so quick videos for me usually mean that's within 15 minutes or so, because my videos typically run a little bit longer than that. But before we jump in, let me give a shout out to the sponsor of our show, Natalie Lopez, attorney at law. When life hits hard, the law firm of Natalie Lopez hits back harder. She practices in the areas of criminal defense and family law based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You can reach her at 954-888-8833. That's 954-888-8833. And at nat.guilty. That's nat.guilty. Allow Natalie to fight for you. Appreciate your continued support of our show, Natalie. God bless. And let's talk about this topic right here. Predictions are being dropped left and right this week. We've seen predictions come in all shapes and sizes from all of the national pundits and prognosticators. Um, and there's been most of them, for the most part, have come with the same gibberish, nonsensical reasoning for why they're picking Indiana to beat the Miami Hurricanes in the national championship, despite the fact that the Miami Hurricanes are playing in their home building in front of what will likely be a 70-30 split crowd for this game. But the comedy of all of it is that Miami beat a common opponent by more than Indiana did and did it more convincingly, in fact, and was more dominating, in fact, in that game, that being Ohio State, who played their last two games against Indiana first in the Big Ten championship, followed by Miami in the Cotton Bowl. Now, Miami ran the ball very effectively against Ohio State and dominated Ohio State physically for the large part of that game, outside of about two possessions in the third and early fourth quarter. But we got to talk about this because the comments from these different media pundits, podcasters. I mean, the comments from guys like RG3 and Matt Leinart and people saying that Carson Beck will be praying for his life and having nightmares and stuff like that. And the comments that this could be the best team of all time. RG3 said that nonsense. Does Miami even have a chance, according to Matt Leinart? Well, that's been the growing narrative and rhetoric that's coming through because, funny as it is, when Indiana played Ohio State, they were the underdog, and most people projected Ohio State to win. And then on top of that, even after that happened, most people were still picking Ohio State to win the national championship. So again, then all of a sudden you start hearing this song and dance about how Indiana's been the best team all season. Well, that's factually incorrect because Indiana was ranked number 2 all the way through all the way until the Big Ten championship game. Until that point, Ohio State was the number 1 team in the CFP. Until that point, Ohio State was ranked number 1 in the AP and the coaches polls. So, for example, we can go back to where was it? Week 15, when Ohio State was ranked number 1 with 61 first place votes to Indiana receiving 5. I mean, that's a fact. So this new rhetoric that Indiana's been the best team all year, and again, and actually in the coaches poll, it was Ohio State receiving all 63 first place votes. That means all the coaches voted in Ohio State as the number 1 team in the country going into championship weekend. But then now, all of a sudden, you're hearing all these same types of people come back with Indiana's been the best team all season, but you weren't picking them against Ohio State. They weren't ranked ahead of Ohio State all year at any point, until they beat Ohio State. And now you're coming out with well, that they've been the best team all year. Well, that's not wholly accurate because I just proved it to you that the rankings did not say that. So while you may have thought that in your mind, deep in your gut, deep in your soul, you didn't say it publicly because you picked Ohio State. Like this is par for the course for these national media members and pundits and podcasters to jump on some gravy train and ignore the facts of what went on all season long. They'll make shit up and create stuff and narratives that hit a certain way. Indiana's this perfect team that doesn't make mistakes. Mendoza is razor sharp. He never makes a mistake. That's factually incorrect. Of course, he makes mistakes. He's not perfect. He threw a pick 6 against Oregon that made it a 2020 game earlier this season. He threw a freaking interception against Ohio State that set up Ohio State's only touchdown, which gave them an early lead at the 20-yard line. He struggled against Penn State. I believe he threw a pick in that game too that led to a Penn State touchdown. So there's been multiple plays throughout the season that Mendoza has made mistakes with. On top of that, Mendoza has not faced a pass rush that's remotely close to the Miami Hurricanes. Not close, people. I mean, when I say not close, I mean not close. You have to ask yourself, what do you consider close? Well, if I told you that the Miami Hurricanes this year had 47 sacks for 356 yards of losses, what would you say? And if I told you that the next team on Indiana's schedule who had 40 sacks that they played this season, oh, that would be none. Okay, that's right. That would be none because they didn't play anybody this year. Any defensive front that had 40 sacks this season. In fact, in the games against teams with a pulse, not teams like Old Dominion who play bums, that was actually the team that had the most sacks that they played all year. Their opener of the season, ODU had 39 sacks this year. But throughout the rest of their schedule, 29 sacks Illinois, 26 Iowa, 30 Oregon, 22 Michigan State, 10 UCLA, 27 Maryland, 32 Penn State, 32 Wisconsin, 35 Ohio State. So 35 is the largest number of sacks that any opponent had this year who played Indiana. So, like I remind you, pass rush is a mofo. Miami has a humongous pass rush. They're going to attack Mendoza all game long, and they're going to make him run for his life. If he's able to withstand that and find a way to get the job done, then what I would do at the end of the game is I would do this, salute, shake your hand, and give you a round of applause because you will have earned a national championship. Period. That's what I would do. And anyone else who doesn't do that, I say, boo-hoo to you because you need to respect that type of performance. Because if you were to beat the Miami Hurricanes on their home field with that type of ferocity, that type of violence and swarm, with that pass rush, then I can only do nothing but shake your hand and congratulate you. That's what a man does. But again, the narrative has been shifted. It keeps getting shifted and shifted and shifted. The goalpost keeps on moving. Then it becomes that Mendoza never makes mistakes, and he's a razor sharp. If you let him get his feet set, he never misses. That would be the case for most quarterbacks. If they get in a rhythm and they're never having to worry about pressure, then yeah, you're going to get in a rhythm and you're going to be hard to stop. That's pretty much any decent level quarterback, let alone a guy who's like him who wins the Heisman Trophy. No one's saying he's not a really good quarterback. Is he an elite quarterback? I don't think there's anyone that's elite anymore in college football at the quarterback position. But let's be real. You haven't faced a real pass rush all season long, and now you're going to face one. So all those things that you claim that he didn't make mistakes against, even though he made some mistakes, now what you're going to see is a guy like Trinidad Chambliss, who this year, going into the game against Miami, had only thrown 3 picks all season. Another guy, never makes mistakes, right? Great legs, can move around, can run, blah, blah, blah. He had 7 yards rushing against Miami. He got shut down the entire game. He got sacked one time. But what the stats don't tell you, if you did not watch the game, is that the Miami pass rush created problems for him to the point that he threw 4 passes that hit Miami players on the chest. And Miami defensive players just dropped the ball. This is a guy that came in with 3 picks who, if Miami had done their job defensively, would have finished with 7 picks because 4 of them would have been that night against Ole Miss, because there was 2 that were pick sixes by Dylan Day, dropped before the first half ended, and Jacoby Thomas, both of which would have been pick sixes, both of which would have avoided Miami giving up points. And then there was another one later in the game, a couple of others later in the game that happened that were not picked as well. So with all these opportunities to make plays, the Miami DBs and linebackers did not make these plays, primarily the DBs. They did not make these plays. I have a hard time believing that if that happens again, they're not going to make these plays. I believe they would make these plays. And so you made a guy like Trinidad Chambliss look like that. And yet people say, oh, he played great. He didn't really play great. He really didn't play great. He had balls that should have been intercepted. And if they were intercepted, that game would have been a 4-touchdown blowout. Didn't happen. So they stuck around the game. They made it close. They took the lead. They made it interesting. And Miami finished them off at the end. That said, There is now a couple of pundits. I mean, we know the ones from the ACC, Aaron Murray. These guys love Miami. They think Miami's going to win. So I'm not looking at them because they've been on the Miami train all year. I say kudos to them for riding the Miami train. But there was one that came out today that I was very, very surprised to hear. I gotta say it. I was very, very, very surprised to hear. And I'm going to play for you what this particular person had to say about the Miami Hurricanes game and Indiana. Take a listen.
Like, if we really do get into this game a little ways, let's say everyone weathers the storm. No one's up 17-3. Because if that's a different conversation. So if we get through like that early portion, it's early second quarter, 10, 9, 8 minutes to go until the half. It's a one possession game either way. It's tied. What have we seen Miami able to do physically? Are we watching it and saying, hey, they're bringing it, but Indiana's giving it right back? Are we looking at it and saying, this game's tied, but dude, Miami's done nothing on the ground? Carson Beck's made some really tight window throws on third down, but they can't keep living like this. Or is it a situation where, boy, Mark Fletcher's already got 68 yards on the ground. He keeps falling forward. That Miami offensive line's getting a push. That size differential really is mattering. Unlike their previous games, Indiana can't just sit in a too-high shell and still stop the run with 4. They're having to commit numbers to the box. Malachi Tony's making plays on the outside, and it's a tie game, but I feel good about Miami's chances. I'm really, really curious about what version of that story we're telling. It could be that we're telling none of those, and Indiana's just up big again because they're really good at breaking that dam. They're really good at water pressure here, water pressure there. Oh, there's your crack. Start kicking over there. And they start kicking, and it breaks. That can absolutely happen here. That's not a fun preview, though. So we don't normally preview games we think are going to be blowouts. We don't think this one's going to be a blowout. Situationals are everything. Indiana, I think by a mile, has been the best situationally aware team, the most fundamentally sound team. They have been the excellence of execution. Who was that, Jesse? Bret Hart. Yeah. Best there is, best there was.
Yes, sir, will be.
Besides Shawn Michaels, the best there ever will be. So Indiana's critical mistakes would shock me most. Think about all the stuff that would shock you in this game. Not aside from the scoreboard itself. What are some things? I'll be interested to see the comment section on this, actually. What are the things that would shock you the most about this game? Because to me, by a mile, the thing happening that would shock me the most is several critical mistakes by Indiana. It wouldn't shock me if Miami won. It would shock me if Miami won because of self-inflicteds and because of penalties and because of being -2 turnovers, botched snaps, a bunch of procedural issues, just guys not handling the moment. If Indiana was victim of that, that would genuinely shock me because every opportunity they've had to suffer that, Big Ten championship game, Rose Bowl last week, the spots keep getting bigger and bigger. They keep getting favored by more and more, and they don't flinch. They look the exact same. In fact, I would argue they've played their best ball. I would say about Fernando Mendoza, who kind of embodies this. Think about how significant what I'm about to say is. He went and played good enough to win the Heisman Trophy, rightfully so, and then he's gotten better since he won the Heisman Trophy because I think he's played his best football in the playoffs. So it would shock me if that was why Miami ended up winning this game. They're second in penalties in the country. They're number 1 in turnover margin. So the one thing that sometimes creeps into play here is each game has a history and a life of its own. Each play in a game has a history and a life of its own. So yes, I will grant you, because we see it all the time, you look at someone's stat profile, like I just said about Indiana. Boy, they're number 2 in the country in penalties. Well, if you have 6 of them, it doesn't really matter what you did during the season. In that 60-minute span, you were penalized. It doesn't matter if you're number 1 in turnover margin in the country. If you are -1 or -2, you lost the turnover battle that day. So a season is not a game. A game's just 4 quarters. A game's 60 minutes. And then I also ask about sort of the variables here. I don't doubt I'm going to get pretty high-level play from Fernando Mendoza. And if I don't, I think it'll be because Miami's defensive front somehow wrecked the game. As much as Fernando Mendoza controls, let me put it this way, I trust him. I trust that dude implicitly. Carson Beck, there's some if. There's some if. It may sound
By the way, I'm playing the whole thing. Well, not the whole video, but a good chunk of it, because I want you to hear all of what he said to get to this point.
disrespectful, whatever. I'm going to pick the game in a second. If I get that fourth quarter Ole Miss Carson Beck, for that matter, go back to the first of the season. If I get Notre Dame Carson Beck, I'm comfortable that Miami can win this game, or I'm very comfortable they can give themselves a shot in the fourth quarter, and that's all you can ask for here. Um, Miami's best is good enough to win this. Indiana has consistently shown their best. So my question basically boils down to, am I going to get Miami's best? Because I think a lot of people out there have questions of whose best can beat the other. I think Miami's best can win this. I just think Indiana is so good at forcing you to not play your best that they've continued to win games.
I think Miami's best would beat Indiana's best. But like you said, you have when you play your best, the other team typically doesn't play their best. Like that's how it usually rolls. Like if one team plays their best game, the other team doesn't play their best game. It's very rare that both teams can play their best game because typically with that situation, you either have a very very low scoring game because if it's a shootout, then no one's playing their best because these are two teams that are defensive teams, have very very good defenses on both sides of the ball. So let's continue.
Let's take a look at what the model thinks. There is differential here from what FanDuel has. FanDuel has Indiana minus 8.5. Model only has Indiana minus 5. I flipped.
I don't know what his model thing is because against Ole Miss, Miami was favored against Ole Miss, and his model had Ole Miss as the favorite against Miami. So I don't even know what his model does.
2 times, I think. Yes, I flipped 2 times on this game. 3 times actually. So I was on something, went the other way. Now I'm back this way. I think Miami's going to play their best game. So I'm going to ride that hunch that their best is good enough on the line of scrimmage, that Carson Beck situationally is good enough, and that the kind of heat they can put on Indiana can force enough mistakes to where they take advantage of some. Now, I don't expect a flawless game from Miami either. I think it's unrealistic to expect to play that way against Indiana. I think they can walk the tightrope in this game because they don't have to do it for a season. They are within 4 quarters reach of a national championship. So is Indiana. I think Miami's best is going to be just good enough to not only take them plus the 8.5. I'll take Miami to win outright, and Miami wins the national championship in their own building.
There you go, man. Josh Pate, one of the foremost expert pundits in the country in college football. I don't always agree with him on a lot of stuff. I think he's very, very knowledgeable. I think he speaks from a very analytical standpoint. I think he understands what we're talking about, what I just explained here on my little yellow note post-it pad. Pressure, defensive line pressure. Fernando Mendoza has not seen that defensive line, front line pressure. He's not played a defense like this one. Ohio State's defense might be elite, might be top shelf, might be number one in the country. But what Ohio State's defense did not do this season, for the most part, they did it against Indiana once. They did force that one interception. But for the most part, Ohio State's defense was not a big turnover forcing team, and they were not a team that put on immense pressure on the quarterback. They played 14 games and they had 35 sacks. That's basically 2+ sacks per game, 2.5 sacks a game. And against I'm looking at the wrong game actually. Shoot, sorry. Against Indiana, they forced one turnover. That interception on Mendoza early in the game. Let's be real. Ohio State in that game had a chance to win, like a legitimate chance to win. They missed a field goal. Well, they chose Ryan Day chose not to kick a field goal in the third quarter on 4th and 1, which cost them at least 3 points because they're at the 5-yard line. And then they missed the field goal from 27 yards with under 3 minutes to go. So that right there, that's 6 points. That's your ball game. That's an Ohio State win. And if that happens, what is the conversation right now about? Heck, on top of that, if that had happened, Miami would have played Indiana already at the Cotton Bowl, more than likely. Heck, actually, maybe not. Maybe Miami would have played Georgia at the Cotton Bowl because Indiana might have dropped to number 3 behind Georgia because Indiana was ranked number 2, went up, and Ohio State only dropped from 1 to 2. Whereas if Ohio State had beaten Indiana, Indiana likely would have dropped from 2 to 3, and Georgia would have bumped up, and Miami would have played them in the Cotton Bowl, and then had an opportunity to play Indiana in the semifinals instead of Ole Miss potentially. But that being said, you have this is an analytical perspective and a data driven perspective, and he's big on data. I don't necessarily agree with everything he says, even in how he, the comments about do you trust Carson Beck? It's like they're always going to find a reason to not trust Carson Beck. Carson Beck, you'd swear based on this stuff that he's thrown one pick every 5 throws. The man throws one pick every 39 plus throws per this season. And he had 6 of them in 2 games, largely predicated on mistakes by his teammates or rushed throws due to immense pass rush that forced him to let go of the ball way too early, otherwise just taking a sack. And that was on 4th down, and the last one was a hot read that his tight end blew. So we can talk about this until we're blue in the face. We saw last week Trinidad Chambliss nearly melt under pressure of the Miami Hurricanes pass rush. He nearly melted, and Miami's defensive backs let him off the hook by dropping interceptions. After that game, I'm sure the defensive backs went to that defense line and were probably apologizing because the defensive backs made that game way harder than it needed to be against Ole Miss. And I would venture to guess that that will not happen again, where they will drop 4 balls that hit them square on their chest. I just can't see it happening again. I just cannot see it happening again. So Josh Pate's picking Miami to beat Indiana in this game, and I don't disagree with him. Obviously, I feel the same way, and I feel the same way because I have data that backs up my opinion. I when it comes down to playing a clean game or not playing a clean game, that's obviously you have to figure that they're going to play a clean game. If Miami commits 10 penalties, it's going to be very hard to win. It's going to be very hard to win. And I would say this: if Miami commits 10 penalties, they're probably going to lose the game. But if they play a clean game like they played versus Ohio State and run the football and do the things that I expect them to do, get to make Mendoza get rid of the ball quickly, put him under pressure. There's no reason on earth that I wouldn't think that Miami's not going to win this game. And I do agree. It's margins. The margins are thin. They're not large margins. I don't think Indiana. If I don't think if Indiana beat Miami, that it would be a large margin. I think it'd be a 1 possession game, either which way. But I do expect Miami to win the football game. And as you can see, one of the foremost experts in college football, whether you like him or not, he's picking Miami to win this game. And I give him salute because most of these guys are too big a pussy to fucking go on a limb. Because I really believe that most of them believe that Miami will win the game and they just don't want to say it. I don't know what it is. I don't know how you can watch the Miami Hurricanes play the last 3 football games that they played and sit here and walk away saying, yeah, Miami's got no chance, or Miami's going to get blown out, or Miami's this, or Miami's that. Bro, Miami just beat 3 teams better than Ohio than Indiana played all season. Like they played 4 teams that were better than. I mean, better. I'm saying better than Oregon. Miami's played 4 teams that are better than Oregon. Miami's played 3 teams back to back to back that are better than Oregon, and that's Indiana's two of Indiana's 3 best wins. The other one being Ohio State, and you have a very clear comparative game, and you saw what happened. And I don't think there's a person that watched those games that really believed that Indiana played better against Ohio State than Miami did. There's no way in the world. Maybe Indiana drew up the blueprint for Miami. Maybe they didn't. I'll give them credit for that. But I think it's pretty fairly obvious that you have to get a pass rush. And by the way, I said I'm making a quick video. We are now at minute 24. So sorry about that. It ain't a 15-minute video. We've gone over that because I talk a lot and I like to give you all the information so you can make your educated decisions on what you think is going to happen. And even for the Indiana fans who are going to be on my shit and commenting here and tell me what an idiot I am, think about it for a second. Has Indiana gone through the gauntlet that Miami's gone through? The answer is no. Miami's been playing playoff games now for 7 weeks. Miami's been on the road for 5 straight games. Straight up, they've been on the road for 5 straight games. This is not the same group that played in October. They're different. They've been battle tested. Indiana has played a couple of, Alabama team that I don't think is that good. And then they played, of course, the next game they played against Oregon, who I never thought was that good to begin with either. So Josh Pate's picking Miami, man. Let's make him a profit because shit, I'm picking Miami, obviously, and I'll have my preview and prediction for my score on Friday. Be on the lookout for it. But man, hey, it's good to have someone on our side. It's good to have somebody. Like at some point, you want to hear someone say something nice about you, right? I mean, it's just normal. But y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This is Hurricanes Unfiltered, powered by Come On Now, the podcast. Come on now.